Hello and welcome to Aviation News Talk. Today we have a Newsmakers edition in which we talk about people who are making the news. Volunteer helicopter pilots played a large role in the disaster relief efforts in North Carolina last week. One flight school and tour company, AeroLuxe Aviation of Nashville, Tennessee, brought 3 of their Robinson R44 helicopters to North Carolina, where they spent 5 days moving supplies into small towns that were cut off from the outside world. Today you'll hear their story. And as we record this, Hurricane Milton is headed for western Florida. We don't yet know what, if any, roles there may be for general aviation pilots after the storm, but organizations such as NBAA, Operation Airdrop, and AeroBridge are registering pilots who may be in a position to help should the need arise. So I encourage you to check out their websites and let them know if you might be able to help. Hello again, and welcome to Aviation News Talk, where we talk in general aviation. My name is Max Trescott. I've been flying for 50 years. I'm the author of several books and the 2008 National Flight Instructor of the Year. And my mission is to help you become the safest possible pilot. Last week in episode 351, we heard from 7 fixed-wing pilots who flew relief missions into North Carolina. So if you didn't hear that episode, you may want to check it out at aviationnewstalk.com/351. And if you're new to the show, take a moment and touch either the subscribe key, or if you're using Spotify or the Apple Podcast app, the follow key, so that next week's episode is downloaded for free. And of course, this is a listener-supported show. If you're interested in helping support our work here, just go out to our support page at aviationnewstalk.com/support. And when you make a donation, I'll read your name on the show. And now let me tell you a little about John Kinard. He retired after 30 years in the U.S. Army as a CW-4 Chief Warrant Officer helicopter pilot. He flew the Apache AH-64, the OH-58D, the AH-6 Little Bird, and the MH-60M Blackhawks in the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment. These days, he gives helicopter check rides and helps run AeroLux Aviation in Nashville, Tennessee. And now here's our conversation with John Kinard. Well, John, welcome to the show. Great to have you here today.
Thanks. Nice to be here.
Well, tell us briefly about AeroLux Aviation. What does the company normally do, and where are you located?
Okay. AeroLux Aviation. We're located in Nashville, John C. Toon Airport. We have 3 R44s, 2 R22s. We also have a fixed wing division with an SR22. We have a DA42, 2 172s, and a decathlon. We have about 9 to 12 at any given time fixed wing pilots, instructors, CFIs. And then we also have 8 helicopter pilots, and 4 of us are CFIs and 2 DPs. Myself as a DP as well.
Got it. And how do you spend most of your time with the company? What's your role?
90% of my role in the company is day-to-day operations.
Well, take us back to the beginning of the hurricane relief effort a little over a week ago. When did you first start to hear about Helene, and how did you decide to come involved with the hurricane relief efforts?
So to be honest, we watched the hurricane on TV, of course. We saw it going inland. We figured it would dissipate. The storm actually got a little worse, so we really kept an eye on it. We saw South Carolina, Georgia, and everybody was having issues with it. And then North Carolina was getting hit really hard up in the mountains. So a friend of ours, JT, he also has a 44, and he called up and said, "Hey, you think you guys want to go help out?" So we got together, all the pilots and everything, and the loaders, everybody at AeroLux. We decided, let's go help out. So I called the EOC in Asheville because they were one of the hardest hit. EOC actually told us they had it under control, didn't need any help. And we were kind of shocked. And because watching the news, we had no idea how bad it was in reality until we got there. So the next day we literally said, let's just go. Let's go see what's going on, see if we can help. We found out a guy named Adam Smith. He had the whole Harley-Davidson building in Asheville, North Carolina. He has the entire building. It got flooded like over 4 feet deep. All the motorcycles destroyed, everything, all the gear, helmets, everything. But they gave him that building to use as a command center. And he basically opened that thing up and just started getting everybody locally and whoever would help guard the place, bring food in, bring water in. And it went from nothing there at all to a full-blown command center within 2 days.
So you moved people and helicopters. I'm guessing you must have had some vehicles. And how many folks did you bring along? And how long does it take to drive there and to fly there?
Yes, we took the 344s. We took off 2 pilots each. We flew from Nashville to Gatlinburg first, got refueled there, and then we left there and another 45 minutes to Asheville. So 2 hours and 45 minutes in helicopters. Then we had 2 trucks and 2 trailers that we keep, and we have those for events. We have fuel tanks that we keep with us and all the any kind of supply we would need for setting up helicopter tours and like sunflower festivals and stuff like that. But it took the trucks over 12 to 14 hours to get there because the roads were so messed up. They had to take alternate routes through the mountains.
And what was it like when you first got there on day one as compared to later in the week when things perhaps were more organized?
Yeah, day one, everybody on the ground, they were literally sleeping in mud. They just threw their sleeping bags on top of mud and just sleeping outside. And that sounds, like normal camping and everything until you don't have a house. Then we wake up the next morning and there's bear paws by the aircraft, bear paw prints. And because we're in North Carolina mountains, and these paw prints were like 6-8 inches around. So they're pretty big bears. So it went from day one looking like that. Literally day 2, each day after that, the landscape literally changed. There was more product. And I'm not even joking. It went from a pallet of water to like 75 pallets of water within 2 days. And then the food, insane amounts of food. I mean, 5, 6, 18-wheelers every 30, 45 minutes would come up and just give us pallets of food to give to people. It was a very impressive.
Now, was this at the airport at Asheville, or where were you and the helicopters located?
We were literally at the Harley-Davidson dealership, Asheville, North Carolina, in the town of Swannanoa.
I see. So you were actually not at an airport because you could work off airport.
Yes, sir. Yep.
Understand. What was the first day that you arrived and started doing operations?
It was a Tuesday, the first, I believe it was. We show up there and literally we hit the ground and started talking to the guys, and they immediately had people that they had been calling in asking for supplies. So we were getting lat longs, military grid reference, like a MGRS locations, and or just regular addresses. And they put it in force line and just fly literally straight to the people's house, land in their yard, and give them what they need.
That's amazing. So what was a typical day like? In other words, how many flights did you typically run? And, I'm assuming this was daylight hours only.
It was daylight hours only. If I would have some night vision goggles, I might have thought about doing that. But if we kept it daylight only, we'd show up at 7:30 in the morning. The first 4 days, there was so much moisture in the air and the temperature and dew point, there was fog. So fog until 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And after that would burn off, we literally had the aircraft running. We had the R44s running. And then at any given time, there was civilian Blackhawks, LUHs, Bell 407s, Bell 206s. They would all show up. But our stuff, R44s, we would take 400 pounds in the back seat, 2 pilots, and about a half a tank of gas because we're only going maybe 30 miles away. So we'd go right there, drop off the stuff, and come right back.
And were the Blackhawks and other helicopters at the same Harley-Davidson location as you were?
Yes. Well, they weren't stationed there permanently, but they would show up and help out. And it was actually some friends of mine.
Right. And how were the requests coming in? How was that managed? How did people know to tell you what to do?
So the funny part was, I don't know how they found out about the command center, but the word got out pretty quick. And they would either go through the local fire departments, which had an EOC. And the biggest thing was we took, Elon Musk came in and he brought us a whole bunch of Starlinks. We took the Starlinks to all the police departments and fire departments around Asheville. So everybody was going to their local fire department and telling them what they needed, oxygen, insulin, and stuff like that. And we would literally just fly it in.
And were there a lot of other civilian helicopters operating out of the same location?
Oh my goodness. Yes. At one day, there was 14 helicopters on the ground. in one day. That day, though, there were 64 different helicopters in there, all civilian helicopters, no military.
Wow. That's incredible.
That's a lot of helicopters.
What were some of the flying challenges that you faced? What was different about, flying these kinds of missions technically as a helicopter pilot?
Yeah, most of them, it was all off airport. Nothing was hard stand to hard stand. It was all confined area operations. You had to take off with minimum power because you're loaded down. Of course, we conducted weight and balances. We have them for every configuration, but we were taking off almost at max power at 1,500 feet MSL, and then you're climbing over 4,000 and 5,000 foot mountains. So you're almost at max manifold pressure crossing the mountain. Then you're going and landing in a confined area on the other side of the mountain. You might be down. I think the highest place I landed was 3,500 feet MSL, but that's still pretty high with minimum power. And if it's a confined area, you might not have a chance to get out of it. So you have to be very, very careful where you shoot your approach.
Hmm. And so what kind of temperatures were you operating with? Was it hot after the storm or cold?
It was hot after the storm. After the front went through, the first couple of days were kind of cool, but after that, midday would warm up to about 85, 90 degrees, which is very difficult on aircraft. Hotter it is, high, hot, and heavy, very hard to operate.
So explain how you can tell as you're coming in for an approach whether or not you're going to be able to get out of there. What are the kinds of things that you're looking for and trying to understand as you make that decision about whether to come in and land or not?
First thing I would do a high recon first, and I'm looking at size of the LZ, suitability, slopes, landing directions, obstacles, and the winds. I do a high recon first, and then I do a low recon. And of course, I'm checking for down power lines, debris. Especially if there was loose debris, I would not even shoot an approach in there because as soon as that gets in your tail rotor, you're done. Then the main thing I'm looking for is the altitude I'm at, the temperature, and then I'm looking at max manifold pressure. So if I'm shooting an approach in there and I'm saying just above ETL, getting that little reverse transverse flow shutter as I'm coming in. And before I descend below obstacles, if I have to do an aborted landing, that's where I want to do it before I descend below obstacles. Sometimes you might not have the chance, but I would prefer to do it before then. But depending on how small that confined area was, that's what I was looking at.
And are you looking at your manifold pressure as you're coming in close to ETL to try and determine how much power you're pulling and how much surplus you might have for getting out?
Yes. Yep. When I'm doing my high recon, I'm looking, I glance and see how high we are flying MSL wise. And I'm looking at the temperature and I'm looking at that max manifold chart just to see how much we have. Because we may not have 20, 25. You might only have 22 and, to pull for 5 minutes or maximum. So it's very crucial.
Tell us what you saw as you were flying over the mountains. How did the landscape look different from how it should?
So where we took off from in Asheville of course, the river overflowed there, but you could be flying in the mountain area and one valley would be totally normal, but the valley with the next valley with the river, it was completely washed out. And when I say houses, you might think houses in the mountains, they might be like little shacks or something, or a little 2 or 3 bedroom house. These houses that we were looking at, they're like multi-million-dollar houses. Some were 3 and 4 and 5 stories high on the side of the mountain. They got washed out completely, like landslide. There's like a giant mudslide down the side of the mountain into the river, cars and all. Place called Bat Cave in Lake Lure. I don't know if you've heard of those. That was the most hard-hitting place. Oh my gosh, it was. And I hate to be morbid, but there were so many bodies in the lake. It was piled up with wood, like all the logs washed down into the lake, jammed up, and bodies in it, and not a single search and rescue boat, not one boat on the water looking for anything. And it's like 7, 8 days after.
And was the lake so full of debris that boats really couldn't operate?
In one section, yes, they were all gathered up. You could probably almost walk across it. It was so congested with logs and people. And I do have pictures of it.
And then a lot of these towns, I guess, the roads were cut off. And was that flooding, landslides? What isolated these communities?
The flooding was so bad that some of the roads are completely gone. They're not even washed out. There's like a mile or two by Lake Lure. The road is completely gone. There's not even a sign of it. And Bat Cave, that town, they call it Island Bat Cave now because all the bridges going to it are gone. Like when I say gone, I mean they got washed away and gone, like completely. Nobody knows where they're at.
Were you also sometimes transporting people out of these towns after you brought supplies in?
People did ask, and we told them if they needed to get out, we could get them out, but nobody ever actually got on the helicopter news.
I see. And what were some of the kinds of things that you were bringing into these towns?
Mainly food, water. There were that town of Bat Cave, they asked for baby stuff, like baby diapers, wipes, and everything. They said the babies were using T-shirts as diapers. So most of the time, food, water, and if they had a special request like oxygen and medicine, we took that.
And I heard that there were a lot of stinging insects and people were looking for EpiPens. Did you encounter any insects when you were there?
I didn't, just because I was flying all the time, but I'm sure, we were out in very remote areas. So I did see a lot of honeybee hives and stuff like that. So I'm sure there's a lot of stuff out there, but I didn't encounter any.
What were some of the stories that people told you of some of the things that they were enduring in these towns when you talked with them?
Oh, good grief. The main thing was they had no communication, no way to get out. They're completely isolated. And if their house was still standing, they were isolated in their house. Most of them were isolated and not even had a house to be in. They were outside by the river or the lake.
Wow.
It was pretty heart-wrenching to see how many people were in there with zero house. I mean, you'd go just walk down the street and people would literally say, I lost everything. And they would point to the river and say, my house is in the river somewhere.
Yeah. So ultimately, I guess these people had to evacuate the area and go somewhere else because it doesn't sound like these areas are habitable now.
Nope, not at all. And the parts that look like they're habitable, the river washed out pretty much underneath the parking lot of the town. And the whole town, in one part by Lake Lure, is literally leaning into the river. They won't even let you land there or walk on that whole area. They said they're going to demolish the whole town.
That's very sad.
Wow.
Have you ever encountered anything at all similar in your past flying experiences?
Never. I've been to hurricanes and the big hurricane in Puerto Rico. After that went through, and the 2 hurricanes down in Florida, zero. I mean, there was damage, but nothing to this extent. I've never seen water wash out like they did.
Wow. So when they say this may be one of the worst storms, that we've had, sounds like everything you saw kind of comports with that.
Yeah. I mean, definitely some heavy rain. And what kind of blew my mind though, is I was watching ForeFlight as the storm came through, and the highest reported wind at any airport was like 75 miles an hour. But they kept reporting 140, 150. Never saw it on ForeFlight at any station.
Right.
So it's kind of confusing, really.
Well, it sounds like the wind was less of an issue than just the rain and the flooding.
Yes. Yep.
Wow. Now, has AeroLux ever done any kinds of volunteer things in the past, community service and so on?
No, we haven't. To be honest, this is the first opportunity. And it actually, I was not shocked, but I was very pleased that everybody at the company just jumped in and said, let's go. And it was all volunteer. It was zero profit whatsoever. It was just volunteer, and we just went at it.
How many days did you stay there flying flights?
About 5.5 days.
And so now that you're back in Nashville, anything that you're needing to do to kind of catch up?
Oh, dear Lord, yes. So we flew the aircraft right at 38 hours for almost each aircraft. And I'm into a 300-hour right now on one and 100-hour on another aircraft. And I don't know if you've done a 300-hour on a Robbie, but it's extensive. It's pretty extensive. We're on day 2, 12 hours a day doing that. And we got tomorrow as well.
Well, I'm kind of curious, how far do you think you would fly in the future to help in these kinds of things? Obviously, Hurricane Milton is headed for Florida right now. Is that kind of within range, or is that kind of far for you folks to help out?
It's a little far, but we're very, very much thinking about it. We've already started discussing it right now to see if that's a possibility, that if they need us, we'll definitely do it.
Were there other organizations that you coordinated with when you were in North Carolina?
Not personally. The Adam Smith, the guy that was running the operation out of Harley-Davidson shop, he was in communication with a whole lot of corporations, people just helping us out with supplies and stuff like that. But I didn't personally do it, or AeroLux did not personally do it.
And did I read that there was a community college who'd provided a couple pilots for you?
Oh, yeah. Austin P is one of our colleges, and a friend of mine that I was in 160th Special Operations for a long time as a Little Bird pilot and a Black Hawk pilot. And he was my buddy Sean Jones, he was a Little Bird pilot as well. So I called him up, and he had trained a couple of our pilots that I hired. And I said, hey, Ray wants to come back home for a couple of days, and I want to swap out some pilots. He goes, you mind if I come help? And I'm like, heck no, come on out. So he came out, and he stayed there for 4 days, helping us out. And he was happy to be there.
So as you think back and reflect over the past week, what kind of feelings do you have when you think about the total experience?
Oh, I think overall, it was a great experience. It was very difficult to see all those people needing help, and they weren't getting the help until we showed up.
Any thoughts you'd have for pilots that are kind of listening and thinking, boy, I'd like to volunteer and help out in similar situations? What would you say to them?
If you can find somebody that'll take you, and you got some hours and you got some experience to help out, do it. It's very satisfying and very humbling when you go out there and you see how good you have it, and you get to go home at night into a nice house, and you got to go out there and help somebody that really needs it. And they're very, very thankful. It's a really good feeling to help out.
I'm kind of guessing that this is probably the most satisfying experience you've probably ever had in aviation.
It is. Because you see your own country, your people in your own country needing help, and then you're able to do that for them. That's huge. It is a very good feeling, and AeroLux is very, very fortunate we were able to go help.
Well, it's fantastic that you had the capability and the resources and the skills, and we're able to do that. And I'm just curious, for people who are listening who are fixed wing pilots, talk briefly about what it takes to do an add-on rating to become a helicopter rated pilot.
Oh yeah. So it's, I don't want to say easy, but flying helicopter is definitely different than an airplane. But I promise you, every airplane pilot I've put in a helicopter is addicted. As soon as they get in a helicopter, they're like, oh my God, I can just stop in the air and look around, and I can see everything. Cause I fly airplanes as well. I'm a commercial airplane guy. And when you get up in a plane, you're just thinking, let's climb high, let's get some insurance, and let's get there. And helicopter wise, you can do an add-on in about 30 hours. You do not have to take another knowledge test because you've already taken one. For your private, instrument, and commercial, your knowledge tests are already complete. You have those ratings in a plane already. So it's really, it's about up to how much time and money you have and you can afford to spend. You could do it in 2 weeks, or I've had people drag it out for 3 years.
Well, I did my helicopter add-on last year at the age of 67 because I was looking for a fun challenge. And oh my gosh, I absolutely love flying helicopters. I've since got my instrument rating, now working on my commercial. So I second what you're saying. In fact, when you said it's easy, I will say, yeah, you know what? It was not as difficult as I thought it was.
Yep.
And I think we already have so many skills as pilots. Some of those do carry over to flying in the helicopter.
Yes.
And I think it probably makes it a little bit easier than most people would think it would be.
Yes. Yep. You're correct. If you already have air sense, all you do is get in, and you already know how to talk on the radio. So that takes, 25% of the issues out of the mix right there.
Yeah, for sure. So tell us where people go to find more about AeroLux Aviation.
You can look us up online, AeroLuxAviation.com, and we have an Instagram page as well. We have a Facebook page and a TikTok page. Basically, my wife pretty much runs all of our social media and she keeps it smoking, all kind of new content all the time. And it's really good. And we have so many tours going downtown Nashville. We offer just a regular downtown tour, and we also do celebrity home tours. Very popular. We take you by all the big time. I'm not going to say their names on here, but all the big time country music stars and some other people.
That's great. Well, I get to Nashville 2-3 times a year, so guaranteed I'm going to look you guys up and go for a flight with you. It sounds like great fun. John, thanks so much for joining us here today, and thanks so much for all of the incredibly valuable services that you and your team provided.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate it.
And my thanks to John Kinard for joining us here today. If you'd like to find out more about AeroLux Aviation, let me mention that Lux has an E at the end of it. So that would be Aero, AeroLuxe, aviation.com. Now, if you've enjoyed the show and have any comments, you can email me by going to aviationnewstalk.com and clicking on Contact at the top of the page. And if you're getting value from this show, well, please support it by going to aviationnewstalk.com/support. And of course, please tell all of your friends about this show. So until next time, fly safely, have fun, and keep the blue side up. And remember that you can always go around.
You can always go around. If it don't look right coming down, don't wait until your side's maybe sliding upside down.